Hi Guy, tonight welcome to the tale of Little Red Riding Hood, one of the most enduring stories in Western folklore, has captivated audiences for centuries with its deceptively simple narrative and profound moral undertones. Its origins lie deep within the oral traditions of European peasant communities, particularly in France and Germany, where it was passed down through generations before being formalized in written form. The earliest known literary version appeared in Charles Perrault's Histoire, ou Contes du temps passé, 1697, a collection of fairy tales that codified oral stories for a courtly audience. Perrault's rendition, stark and morally unambiguous, ends tragically with the protagonist devoured by the wolf, serving as a grim warning about the dangers of naivety. Over a century later, the Brothers Grimm offered a softer version in their 1812 collection, Kinder- und Hausmärchen, introducing the huntsman who rescues Little Red and her grandmother, thus aligning the tale with emerging 19th century values of redemption and hope. Yet, beneath these literary adaptations lies a far older tradition, one that resonates with moral and cautionary tales stretching back over 2,000 years, connecting Little Red Riding Hood to a universal human impulse to warn against the perils of innocence in a treacherous world. The story's core elements, the young girl, the red hood, the wolf, and the forest carry symbolic weight that transcends its European roots. The red hood, a vivid marker of identity, symbolizes innocence, youth, and vulnerability. Its bright color makes Little Red both conspicuous and alluring, a beacon in the dark forest that draws the predatory gaze of the wolf. This dynamic reflects a timeless societal anxiety, the tension between protecting the young and preparing them for a world fraught with danger. The wolf, far from a mere animal, embodies a spectrum of threats, deception, temptation, or exploitation that lurk beyond the safety of home. In Perrault's era, the wolf could be read as a metaphor for the libertine courtiers who preyed on naive young women, while in earlier oral versions it might have represented bandits, wild beasts, or even supernatural forces feared by rural communities. The forest, a liminal space of mystery and peril, serves as the stage where innocence is tested, a motif that echoes across cultures and epochs. To understand the tale's deeper significance, we must trace its resonance with narratives from antiquity. The story of Little Red Riding Hood shares thematic DNA with myths like that of Persephone in Greek mythology, a tale over 2,000 years old. Persephone, a young maiden, is lured by the beauty of a flower and abducted by Hades, the god of the underworld, marking a loss of innocence and a descent into darkness. Like Little Red, Persephone's journey begins with naivety and ends with transformation, albeit through divine intervention rather than a huntsman's axe. Both stories grapple with the inevitable clash between innocence and a predatory world, a theme that recurs in ancient literature from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the fables of Aesop. In these narratives, youthful protagonists often stray from safety, encountering forces that test their judgment and resilience. The enduring power of Little Red Riding Hood lies in its ability to distill these ancient anxieties into a concise, accessible form that speaks to both children and adults. The tale's initial meaning was not merely to entertain, but to instruct. In its oral and early written forms, Little Red Riding Hood functioned as a cautionary tale, particularly for young women navigating the transition from childhood to adulthood. In 17th century Europe, where Perrault penned his version, social structures were rigidly patriarchal, and young women faced constant threats to their safety and reputation. The story warned against straying from prescribed paths, both literal and metaphorical, and trusting strangers who might exploit vulnerability. The Red Hood, often interpreted as a symbol of puberty or sexual awakening, underscored the dangers of being noticed in a society quick to judge or harm. Perrault's tragic ending reinforced this lesson with brutal clarity. Disobedience or naivety could lead to irreversible consequences. The Grimm's later adaptation, with its happier resolution, reflected a shift toward narratives that balanced warning with hope, aligning with the Romantic era's emphasis on moral growth and redemption. Yet, the tale's significance extends beyond its immediate historical context. Over 2,000 years, humanity has crafted stories to navigate the tension between innocence and experience, a dichotomy explored in philosophical traditions from Plato to Rousseau. In Plato's allegory of the cave, for instance, the journey from ignorance to enlightenment mirrors Little Red's path through the forest, where ignorance of the wolf's true nature leads to peril. Similarly, Rousseau's concept of the noble savage highlights the purity of natural innocence, yet warns of its fragility in a corrupted world. Little Red Riding Hood encapsulates these ideas in narrative form, presenting innocence as both a virtue and a liability. The tale's warning to remain vigilant, to question appearances, to adhere to wisdom echoes the moral imperatives of ancient philosophies that urged self-awareness and prudence. The story's adaptability has ensured its survival across centuries. In medieval Europe, oral versions likely varied by region, with the wolf embodying local fears, from marauders to famine. In some tellings, the protagonist outwits the wolf, emphasizing cunning over rescue, a variation that highlights the tale's flexibility in reflecting cultural values. This adaptability connects Little Red Riding Hood to a broader tradition of folklore, where stories serve as vessels for collective wisdom. From the cautionary tales of ancient Mesopotamia to the parables of early Christianity, narratives have long been used to impart lessons about survival, morality, and identity. Little Red Riding Hood fits squarely within this tradition, its simplicity belying a profound message about the dangers of naivety and the necessity of growth. In its earliest iterations, Little Red Riding Hood was not a tale for children alone, but a shared cultural artifact that spoke to universal human experiences. Its imagery of the Red Hood, the cunning wolf, the shadowy forest taps into archetypal fears and desires, making it as relevant today as it was in antiquity. The tale's initial meaning, rooted in the need to protect and prepare the young for a perilous world, remains a cornerstone of its enduring appeal. By warning against the consequences of straying from safety, it reflects a 2,000-year-old imperative to balance innocence with vigilance, a lesson as vital in the modern era as it was in the forests of medieval Europe. This section sets the stage for exploring how Little Red Riding Hood continues to resonate, its ancient roots nourishing a narrative that speaks to the timeless challenges of human existence. In Little Red Riding Hood, the titular Red Hood is far more than a sartorial detail. It is a potent symbol laden with cultural, psychological, and historical significance. This vibrant garment, whether a cap in Charles Perrault's 1697 version, or a cloak in the Brothers Grimm's 1812 retelling, defines the protagonist's identity and sets the stage for her perilous journey. The hood's striking color and its role in the narrative make it a focal point for interpreting the tale's deeper meanings. Across 2,000 years of human storytelling, from ancient myths to modern folklore, the color red and the act of wearing a distinctive garment have carried profound connotations, marking transitions, signaling vulnerability, and evoking both life and danger. The Red Hood encapsulates these themes, serving as a timeless warning about the delicate balance between innocence and exposure in a predatory world. The color red is inherently evocative, carrying a universal resonance that transcends cultural boundaries. In human history, red has been associated with the primal forces of lifeblood, passion, and vitality, but also with peril, sacrifice, and taboo. In ancient cultures, red pigments derived from ochre or cinnabar were used in rituals to mark significant life events, from birth to death. For example, in ancient Egypt, red was linked to the goddess Sekhmet, a deity of both destruction and healing, embodying the dual nature of creation and chaos. Similarly, in Roman traditions, red was worn by brides to symbolize fertility and ward off evil, a practice that echoes the protective yet conspicuous role of Little Red's hood. The hood's hue thus positions the protagonist at a liminal stage, poised between childhood and adulthood, innocence and experience. Its brightness makes her stand out in the dark forest, rendering her both a beacon of purity and a target for predation, a duality that underscores the tale's cautionary message. Within the context of Little Red Riding Hood, the red hood is often interpreted as a symbol of puberty or sexual awakening, particularly in Perrault's 17th century France, where the tale was crafted for a courtly audience attuned to moral and social subtexts. The hood marks Little Red as a young woman transitioning into a phase of life fraught with new dangers, particularly from male predators symbolized by the wolf. This interpretation aligns with historical anxieties about female virtue in patriarchal societies, where a young woman's visibility could invite unwanted attention. The red hood, by drawing the wolf's gaze, becomes a metaphor for the societal pressures placed on women to navigate their emerging identities with caution. Over 2,000 years, similar symbols appear in myths like that of Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of love, whose red-hued allure was both empowering and perilous, or in the scarlet cloaks of priestesses in ancient mystery cults, marking them as sacred yet vulnerable. The hood itself, as a garment, adds another layer of symbolism. Hoods and cloaks are archetypal markers of transition, often worn during rites of passage to signify a change in status. In medieval Europe, where many oral versions of the tale circulated, cloaks were practical garments for travelers, but they also carried symbolic weight in folklore, concealing identities or signaling quests. Little Red's hood, given to her by her grandmother in some versions, connects her to familial love and protection. Yet its vivid color undermines this safety by making her conspicuous. This paradox mirrors ancient narratives, such as the myth of Demeter and Persephone, where Persephone's youthful beauty akin to the red hood draws Hades' attention, leading to her abduction. Both stories use a distinctive trait to highlight the protagonist's vulnerability, warning that innocence, when unguarded, invites danger. Psychologically, the red hood can be seen as a projection of Little Red's inner state, embodying her curiosity and desire for independence. In Jungian terms, red is a color of the anima, the unconscious feminine archetype, suggesting that the hood represents Little Red's burgeoning self-awareness. Yet, this self-expression comes at a cost, as it attracts the shadow archetype the wolf, embodying repressed or external threats. This psychological reading connects the tale to ancient philosophical traditions, such as Plato's exploration of the soul's journey toward knowledge, where the pursuit of truth often exposes one to peril. Over 2,000 years, from Stoic teachings on self-control to medieval Christian allegories, the tension between self-discovery and external danger has been a recurring theme, reflected in the Red Hood's dual role as a symbol of freedom and liability. The Red Hood's symbolism also extends to societal warnings about visibility and conformity. In the hierarchical societies of early modern Europe, standing out could be dangerous, particularly for women. The hood's brightness can be read as a critique of naivety or defiance, as Little Red's choice to wear it, whether conscious or not, marks her as different, inviting scrutiny. This theme resonates with ancient cautionary tales, such as the story of Icarus, whose bold flight too close to the sun led to his downfall. Both narratives warn against the perils of overstepping boundaries, a lesson that has persisted across millennia in myths, fables, and religious texts. The Red Hood, in this light, becomes a timeless emblem of the risks inherent in asserting individuality in a world that demands caution. The tale's adaptability ensures that the Red Hood's symbolism evolves with each retelling. In oral traditions predating Perrault, the red garment might have been a shawl or scarf, reflecting local customs, but its role as a marker of identity remained constant. In modern interpretations, the hood has been reimagined as a symbol of empowerment, with Little Red embracing her agency rather than succumbing to victimhood. Yet, the core warning remains: visibility, whether of innocence, beauty, or defiance, carries risks. This message connects Little Red Riding Hood to a 2,000-year-old tradition of storytelling from the Epic of Inanna in ancient Mesopotamia, where the goddess's adornments signal her divine status yet invite challenges, to medieval morality plays warning against vanity. Ultimately, the Red Hood is a multifaceted symbol that encapsulates the tale's enduring power. It represents the beauty and fragility of youth, the allure and danger of visibility, and the universal journey from innocence to experience. Its vivid color and narrative prominence draw on a deep well of cultural and historical associations, linking Little Red Riding Hood to ancient myths and philosophies that grapple with the human condition. By marking Little Red as both protected and exposed, the hood serves as a timeless reminder of the need for vigilance in a world where innocence is both cherished and threatened. As we explore the tale's broader themes, the Red Hood remains a vibrant thread, weaving together 2,000 years of warnings about the delicate interplay between self-expression and survival. In Little Red Riding Hood, the wolf is far more than a mere forest predator. It is a potent symbol of temptation, deception, and primal danger, embodying threats that resonate across cultures and eras. Whether in Charles Perrault's grim 1697 version, where the wolf devours the protagonist, or the Brothers Grimm's 1812 retelling, where redemption tempers the narrative, the wolf remains the tale's central antagonist. Its cunning dialogue, manipulative charm, and predatory nature elevate it beyond a simple animal to a universal archetype of peril. Over 2,000 years, from ancient myths to modern folklore, the wolf has appeared as a multifaceted symbol, representing both external threats and internal desires. In Little Red Riding Hood, it serves as a timeless warning about the dangers of succumbing to temptation and the necessity of discernment in a world filled with hidden threats. The wolf's symbolism is rooted in its dual nature, as both a creature of the wild and a cunning manipulator. In European folklore, wolves were feared as real dangers in rural landscapes, capable of attacking livestock or even humans. Yet, their intelligence and social behavior also made them figures of fascination, often imbued with supernatural qualities in oral traditions. In Little Red Riding Hood, the wolf's ability to speak and deceive, convincing Little Red to stray from her path, and later impersonating her grandmother, relevates it to a human-like adversary. This anthropomorphism aligns the wolf with societal threats, such as charlatans, seducers, or exploiters who prey on the vulnerable. In Perrault's 17th century context, the wolf likely symbolized the libertine courtiers of the French court, whose charm masked predatory intentions toward naive young women. This interpretation connects the tale to historical anxieties about trust and betrayal, particularly for those navigating the transition from childhood to adulthood. Across 2,000 years, the wolf's archetype finds echoes in ancient narratives. In Roman mythology, the she-wolf that nurtures Romulus and Remus is a complex figure, embodying both maternal care and wild ferocity, highlighting the duality of protection and danger. Similarly, in Norse mythology, the monstrous wolf Fenrir represents chaos and destruction, a force that threatens the gods themselves. These stories, like Little Red Riding Hood, use the wolf to explore humanity's fear of forces that disrupt order, whether external predators or internal impulses. The biblical serpent in the Garden of Eden offers a parallel, deceiving Eve with smooth words and leading to humanity's fall. Both the serpent and the wolf use guile to exploit trust, underscoring a universal warning about the seductive power of deception that spans millennia. Psychologically, the wolf can be interpreted as a manifestation of the shadow archetype, as described by Carl Jung. The shadow represents the repressed or darker aspects of the psyche, instincts, desires, or fears that lurk beneath conscious awareness. In Little Red Riding Hood, the wolf embodies this shadow, tempting Little Red to stray from the safety of her mother's instructions and confront the unknown. Its ability to mimic her grandmother further amplifies its role as a deceiver, blurring the line between familiar and foreign, safety and danger. This psychological reading connects the tale to ancient philosophical traditions, such as Plato's dialogues on the soul's struggle against base desires or Stoic teachings on mastering impulses through reason. The wolf's presence warns that unchecked curiosity or trust can lead to peril, a lesson as relevant in the modern era as it was in antiquity. The wolf's role as a symbol of temptation also ties it to societal and moral warnings. In medieval Europe, where oral versions of the tale likely circulated, wolves were often associated with sin or the devil in Christian allegories. The wolf's predatory nature in Little Red Riding Hood mirrors warnings found in medieval morality plays, where characters are lured astray by vice, only to face divine judgment. This moral framework aligns with the tale's cautionary intent, urging vigilance against those who exploit innocence for selfish ends. Over 2,000 years, from the cautionary fables of Aesop to the parables of early Christianity, narratives have used predatory figures to teach the importance of discernment and moral integrity. The wolf, with its charming exterior and hidden menace, embodies this timeless lesson. Culturally, the wolf symbolism reflects anxieties about the boundaries between civilization and the wild. In the tale, the forest where the wolf roams represents a realm beyond societal control, where rules and protections falter. This dichotomy echoes ancient myths, such as the Greek tale of Lycaon, a king transformed into a wolf for defying the gods, symbolizing the descent into savagery. In Little Red Riding Hood, the wolf's ability to infiltrate the grandmother's homeospace of domestic safe underscores the fragility of these boundaries. This theme resonates with historical fears of external threats, from bandits in medieval Europe to the outsiders demonized in various cultures. The wolf's deception warns that danger often wears a familiar face, a message that remains pertinent in today's world of digital scams and hidden agendas. The wolf's adaptability in the tale's various retellings enhances its symbolic power. In some oral traditions, the wolf is outwitted by a clever protagonist, emphasizing resilience over victimhood. In Perrault's version, its victory reinforces the tale's stark warning, while the Grimm's edition of The Huntsman introduces hope of salvation. These variations reflect the tale's ability to mirror the values of its audience, much like ancient myths adapted to local contexts. For example, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the wild man Enkidu represents untamed nature, Yet his integration into society parallels the wolf's dual role as both threat and teacher. The wolf's enduring presence in Little Red Riding Hood underscores its role as a versatile symbol, capable of embodying whatever dangers a society fears most. Ultimately, the wolf in Little Red Riding Hood is a timeless emblem of temptation and danger, drawing on a 2,000-year-old tradition of storytelling that warns against deception and naivety. Its cunning and predatory nature connect it to archetypes found in ancient myths, religious texts, and philosophical teachings, from the serpent's guile to Fenrir's chaos. By luring Little Red off her path and into peril, the wolf serves as a cautionary figure, urging discernment and resilience in the face of alluring but dangerous forces. As we navigate a modern world filled with new wolves, from manipulative media to predatory ideologies, the tale's warning remains as vital as ever, reminding us to question appearances and guard against the seductive pull of temptation. In Little Red Riding Hood, the forest is not merely a backdrop, but a powerful symbol of chaos, uncertainty, and the trials of life. It is the realm where Little Red strays from her mother's path, encounters the wolf, and faces the consequences of her naivety. Whether in Charles Perrault's stark 1697 version or the Brothers Grimm's redemptive 1812 retelling, the forest serves as a liminal space, a threshold between the safety of home and the dangers of the unknown. Across 2,000 years of storytelling, from ancient myths to modern folklore, forests have represented places of transformation, where individuals confront their fears, desires, and true selves. In Little Red Riding Hood, the forest embodies the universal experience of being lost, both physically and metaphorically, serving as a timeless warning about the perils of straying from wisdom and the journey toward maturity. The forest's symbolic resonance is deeply rooted in its historical and cultural significance. In medieval Europe, where oral versions of the tale likely originated, forests were tangible places of danger home to wild animals, bandits, and supernatural beings in folklore. They were also spaces of mystery, where societal rules dissolved and individuals faced existential tests. For rural communities, the forest was both a source of resources and a realm of fear, a duality that Little Red Riding Hood exploits to great effect. When Little Red enters the forest, she leaves the structured world of her village, stepping into a domain where the wolf's deception can thrive. This transition mirrors ancient narratives, such as the Greek myth of Orpheus, who ventures into the shadowy underworlder forest-like realm to retrieve Eurydice, only to face loss through his own failings. Both stories use the forest as a metaphor for life's uncertainties, where choices carry profound consequences. Psychologically, the forest represents the uncharted territory of the human psyche. In Jungian terms, it is a manifestation of the unconscious, a place where repressed fears and desires surface. Little Red's journey through the forest can be seen as an exploration of her own burgeoning identity, where her curiosity and naivety lead her to confront the wolf, the shadow archetype of danger and temptation. This psychological interpretation aligns with ancient philosophical traditions, such as Plato's allegory of the cave, where the journey from darkness to light symbolizes the soul's struggle to navigate ignorance and achieve enlightenment. Over 2,000 years, from Stoic teachings on confronting inner turmoil to medieval Christian allegories of spiritual trials, the forest has served as a metaphor for the inner wilderness where individuals grapple with their vulnerabilities. In Little Red Riding Hood, the forest tests Little Red's ability to discern truth from deception, a lesson as relevant today as in antiquity. Culturally, the forest embodies the tension between civilization and the wild. In the tale, It is a space beyond the control of societal norms, where the wolf's predatory nature can flourish. This dichotomy echoes ancient myths, such as the Epic of Gilgamesh, where the cedar forest represents a realm of chaos guarded by the monster Humbaba. Like Little Red, Gilgamesh enters this forest to prove his heroism, only to confront his own mortality. Both narratives highlight the forest as a place of transformation, where innocence or hubris is tested and wisdom is gained through hardship. In medieval Europe, forests were often associated with divine or demonic forces, as seen in tales of knights entering enchanted woods to face trials, such as those in Arthurian legends. The forest in Little Red Riding Hood thus connects to a 2,000-year-old tradition of using natural settings to explore human fragility and resilience. The forest's role as a metaphor for being lost also carries moral and societal implications. In Perrault's version, Little Red's decision to stray from the path encouraged by the wolf leads to her demise, reinforcing the tale's warning against disobedience and naivety. The Grimm's version, with its redemptive ending, suggests that being lost is a necessary part of growth, provided one learns from the experience. This moral framework aligns with ancient cautionary tales, such as Aesop's fables, where characters who wander from wisdom face consequences but sometimes find redemption. For example, the fable of the fox and the grapes warns against rationalizing failure, much as Little Red's trust in the wolf rationalizes her deviation from safety. Over millennia, from biblical parables to medieval morality plays, the motif of being lost has served to teach the importance of adhering to wisdom and resisting temptation. The forest's symbolism also reflects historical anxieties about boundaries and safety. In early modern Europe, where Little Red Riding Hood was formalized, forests were shrinking due to agriculture and urbanization, yet they remained potent symbols of the unknown. For young women like Little Red, the forest represented the dangers of stepping outside societal protections, particularly in patriarchal societies where female autonomy was limited. The tale's warning to stay on the path resonates with historical admonitions to conform to social norms, a theme that echoes in ancient texts like the Book of Proverbs, which urges adherence to righteousness to avoid ruin. The forest, as a space where rules falter, underscores the fragility of safety and the need for vigilance, a message that remains pertinent in a modern world filled with metaphorical forests, like the internet or urban anonymity. The adaptability of the forest symbolism ensures its enduring relevance. In oral traditions predating Perrault, the forest might have been a local wood or a mythical realm, tailored to regional fears. In modern retellings, it has been reimagined as everything from a psychological labyrinth to a dystopian landscape, reflecting contemporary anxieties. Yet, its core meaning persists. The forest is where one becomes lost, both literally and figuratively, and where growth emerges through trial. This universality connects Little Red Riding Hood to ancient narratives like the Odyssey, where Odysseus's wanderings through perilous landscapes mirror the journey to self-discovery. The forest's role as a transformative space underscores its place in a 2,000-year-old storytelling tradition that grapples with the human condition. Ultimately, the forest in Little Red Riding Hood is a timeless metaphor for being lost, encapsulating the challenges of navigating an unpredictable world. Its shadowy paths and hidden dangers draw on ancient archetypes found in myths, philosophies, and religious texts, from the underworld of Greek mythology to the wilderness of biblical trials. By placing Little Red in this liminal space, the tale warns of the perils of straying from wisdom while offering hope that growth can emerge from hardship. As we face modern forests of uncertainty, whether technological, social, or personal, the forest remains a powerful symbol, urging us to tread carefully, question our paths, and seek wisdom amidst chaos. In Little Red Riding Hood, the protagonist's journey embodies the delicate interplay between innocence and responsibility, a dynamic that lies at the heart of the tale's enduring moral message. Little Red, with her bright hood and trusting nature, represents unblemished innocency, a quality both cherished and perilous. Her decision to stray from her mother's path and engage with the wolf, whether in Charles Perrault's tragic 1697 version or the Brothers Grimm's redemptive 1812 retelling, underscores the consequences of naivety and the necessity of personal accountability. Over 2,000 years, from ancient philosophical teachings to modern folklore, the tension between innocence and responsibility has been a recurring theme, warning that unchecked trust can lead to peril while emphasizing the growth that comes from learning to navigate life's dangers. In Little Red Riding Hood, these lessons resonate as a timeless call to balance youthful purity with the wisdom of responsibility. Little Red's innocence is her defining trait, embodied in her unquestioning trust and curiosity. In Perrault's version, her willingness to share her destination with the wolf and to linger in the forest picking flowers reflects a childlike openness that, while endearing, invites disaster. The Grimm's version softens this outcome, allowing her survival through the huntsman's intervention, yet the core lesson remains. Innocence, without the tempering force of responsibility, leaves one vulnerable. This narrative arc mirrors historical anxieties about youth, particularly in early modern Europe, where young women were expected to adhere strictly to social norms to avoid moral or physical ruin. Little Red's deviation from her mother's instructions, both literal, in straying from the path, and metaphorical, in trusting a stranger, highlights the dangers of failing to exercise caution, a theme that connects to ancient moral teachings. The concept of innocence as both a virtue and a liability has deep roots in human storytelling. In ancient Greece, Plato's dialogues, such as the Republic, explore the soul's journey from ignorance to wisdom, warning that naivety must be tempered by knowledge to avoid harm. Similarly, the myth of Pandora, whose curiosity unleashes chaos, parallels Little Red's unwitting role in her own peril. Both stories underscore the need for responsibility to guide innocent impulses. Over 2,000 years, from the fables of Aesop to the parables of the New Testament, narratives have cautioned against the perils of unchecked innocence. For example, the parable of the prodigal son illustrates the consequences of youthful recklessness, yet offers hope for redemption through accountability, much like the Grimm's version of Little Red Riding Hood. These ancient lessons frame Little Red's story as a universal warning about the need to pair purity with prudence. Psychologically, Little Red's innocence can be seen as a stage of development where curiosity drives exploration, but requires the scaffolding of responsibility to ensure safety. In Freudian terms, her journey reflects the transition from the id's impulsive desires to the ego's reasoned control, a process fraught with risks. The wolf, as a symbol of temptation, exploits Little Red's lack of discernment, highlighting the need for self-awareness. This psychological perspective aligns with ancient Stoic philosophy, which emphasizes self-mastery as a defense against external dangers. Marcus Aurelius, for instance, urged individuals to govern their impulses through reason, a principle that resonates with Little Red's need to learn from her encounter with the wolf. The tale's lesson that innocence must be tempered by responsibility thus connects to a 2,000-year-old tradition of exploring human growth through trial and error. Culturally, Little Red Riding Hood reflects societal expectations around responsibility, particularly for young women in patriarchal contexts. In 17th century France, where Perrault wrote, young women were taught to uphold virtue and obedience to avoid social or physical harm. Little Red's failure to heed her mother's warning to stay on the path can be read as a caution against defying societal norms, a message reinforced by Perrault's tragic ending. The Grimm's version, with its redemptive arc, suggests that responsibility can be learned through experience, aligning with 19th century ideals of moral growth. This theme echoes ancient texts like the Book of Proverbs, which advises adherence to wisdom to avoid ruin, and medieval morality plays, where characters face consequences for straying from virtue. The tale's emphasis on responsibility as a shield against danger remains relevant in modern contexts, where individuals must navigate complex social and digital landscapes. The interplay of innocence and responsibility also carries moral implications. In the tale, Little Red's trust in the wolf is not inherently wronger. Openness reflects a natural human desire to connect, but her failure to question his motives leads to peril. This dynamic mirrors ancient cautionary tales, such as Aesop's The Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, where trust in appearances invites disaster. Over millennia, from Confucian teachings on duty to Christian sermons on vigilance, the call to balance innocence with accountability has been a constant. Little Red Riding Hood distills this lesson into a narrative accessible to all ages, warning that innocence, while precious, must be guided by the responsibility to discern truth from deception. The tale's adaptability ensures that its lessons on innocence and responsibility evolve with cultural contexts. In oral traditions predating Perrault, Little Red sometimes outwits the wolf, emphasizing her agency and learned responsibility. In modern retellings, she may be portrayed as a figure of empowerment, navigating the forest with growing confidence. Yet, the core message persists. Innocence is a starting point, not an end point. This universality connects the tale to ancient narratives like the Odyssey, where Odysseus's trials teach him to temper his curiosity with wisdom. The journey from innocence to responsibility is a rite of passage, one that Little Red Riding Hood encapsulates through its simple yet profound narrative. In today's world, the lessons of innocence and responsibility remain strikingly relevant. The forest of modern life filled with digital temptations, misinformation, and social pressures demands discernment akin to Little Red's need to question the wolf. The tale warns that innocence, while valuable, can lead to vulnerability without the anchor of responsibility. This message, rooted in 2,000 years of storytelling, from ancient myths to religious parables, urges individuals to cultivate self-awareness and accountability. Whether navigating personal relationships or global challenges, the call to balance trust with caution echoes through Little Red Riding Hood, reminding us that growth comes from learning to tread carefully in a world where wolves may lurk behind familiar faces. Ultimately, Little Red Riding Hood uses the interplay of innocence and responsibility to convey a timeless lesson. Purity must be paired with wisdom to survive life's trials. Little Red's journey, fraught with mistakes yet rich with potential for growth, reflects a universal human experience. By drawing on ancient archetypes and philosophical insights, the tale underscores the enduring need to temper innocence with responsibility, a message as vital today as it was in the forests of folklore or the forums of antiquity. In the Brothers Grimm's 1812 retelling of Little Red Riding Hood, the huntsman emerges as a pivotal figure, rescuing Little Red and her grandmother from the wolf's belly and restoring order to a narrative disrupted by deception and danger. Absent in Charles Perrault's darker 1697 version, where the wolf's victory is final, the huntsman's introduction reflects a shift toward redemption and hope, aligning with 19th century values of moral resolution. Far from a mere plot device, The huntsman embodies the archetype of the savior, a symbol of salvation and justice that resonates across 2,000 years of storytelling. From ancient myths to modern folklore, figures like the huntsman have represented society's reliance on protectors to confront evil and uphold righteousness. In Little Red Riding Hood, the huntsman's role underscores a timeless message. Even in the face of overwhelming peril, justice can prevail through courage and intervention, offering hope amidst the chaos of the human experience. The huntsman's symbolic significance is rooted in his role as a restorer of balance. In the Grimm's narrative, he enters the story at its darkest moment, when Little Red and her grandmother are consumed by the wolf, symbolizing the triumph of deception over innocence. Armed with his axe, the huntsman not only slays the wolf but liberates its victims, enacting a form of justice that punishes the predator and saves the innocent. This act of heroism aligns with historical archetypes of the protector, prevalent in European folklore where woodsmen, knights, or divine figures intervene to safeguard communities. In medieval Europe, where oral versions of the tale circulated, huntsmen were practical, figure-skilled trackers who navigated the dangerous forests, yet their narrative role elevated them to symbols of order, countering the chaos embodied by the wolf. Across 2,000 years, the huntsman's archetype finds parallels in ancient myths and religious narratives. In Greek mythology, heroes like Hercules undertake labors to defeat monstrous threats, restoring harmony to the world. Hercules' slaying of the Nemean lion mirrors the huntsman's defeat of the wolf, both acts symbolizing the triumph of human courage over primal danger. Similarly, in the biblical narrative of David and Goliath, David's victory over a seemingly insurmountable foe reflects the huntsman's role as an unexpected deliverer of justice. These stories, like Little Red Riding Hood, emphasize the hope that salvation can emerge even in the darkest moments, a theme that resonates across cultures and eras. The huntsman's intervention thus taps into a universal human desire for redemption, a belief that good can prevail through decisive action. Psychologically, the huntsman can be interpreted as an external manifestation of the ego's ability to restore order to the psyche. In Jungian terms, the wolf represents the shadow one-controlled instincts or external threats, while the huntsman embodies the conscious self's capacity to confront and overcome these dangers. His timely arrival suggests the awakening of discernment and strength within Little Red's narrative arc, symbolizing the potential for growth even after naivety leads to peril. This psychological reading aligns with ancient philosophical traditions, such as Stoic teachings on resilience, which urge individuals to face adversity with courage and reason. Seneca, for instance, emphasized the importance of confronting life's trials to achieve virtue, a principle reflected in the huntsman's decisive action. Over 2,000 years, from Plato's concept of the philosopher king as a guide for the soul to medieval Christian ideals of divine salvation, the huntsman's role connects to a tradition of seeking order amidst chaos. Culturally, the huntsman reflects societal reliance on guardians of justice. In the Grimm's 19th century Germany, where industrialization and social change were reshaping traditional communities, the huntsman symbolized a nostalgic ideal of the protector who upholds moral order. His role as a solitary figure, operating outside the domestic sphere yet defending it, echoes medieval tales of knights errant, such as those in Arthurian legends, who ventured into perilous realms to rescue the vulnerable. This archetype also appears in ancient narratives like the Epic of Gilgamesh, where Gilgamesh's partnership with Enkidu represents a collaborative effort to tame chaotic forces. In Little Red Riding Hood, the huntsman's intervention reassures audiences that society can restore balance, even when innocence is threatened by predatory forces. a message that resonates in modern contexts, where communities seek protectors against social or technological dangers. The huntsman's role also carries moral and societal implications. In the Grimm's version, his punishment of the wolf filling its belly with stones in some retelling serves as a form of poetic justice, ensuring that the predator suffers for its deception. This act aligns with ancient moral codes, such as the concept of lex talionis, an eye for an eye, in Babylonian law, or the retributive justice of biblical teachings. Over millennia, from Confucian emphasis on restoring harmony to Christian narratives of divine judgment, stories have used figures like the huntsman to affirm that wrongdoing will be met with consequences. The huntsman's presence in Little Red Riding Hood thus reinforces the tale's cautionary message. While innocence may invite danger, justice can intervene to protect and restore. The adaptability of the huntsman's role ensures its relevance across different versions of the tale. In some oral traditions, the savior figure might be a woodsman, a neighbor, or even Little Red herself, reflecting local values of self-reliance or community support. In modern retellings, the huntsman may be reimagined as a symbol of empowerment, with Little Red taking on his role to defeat the wolf. Yet, the core symbolism persists. The huntsman represents hope and justice, offering a counterbalance to the wolf's chaos. This flexibility connects the tale to ancient narratives like the Odyssey, where Odysseus's cunning and perseverance restore order after years of trials, or the Ramayana, where Rama's heroism rescues Sita from Ravana's clutches. The huntsman's role thus draws on a 2,000-year-old tradition of storytelling that celebrates salvation through action. In today's world, the huntsman's symbolism remains profoundly relevant. As societies grapple with modern wolves, from systemic injustices to digital predators, the need for figures who uphold justice and protect the vulnerable persists. The huntsman's decisive intervention reminds us that hope and order can emerge even in the face of overwhelming threats, whether personal, social, or global. This message, rooted in ancient archetypes and philosophical insights, underscores the enduring power of Little Red Riding Hood. By introducing the huntsman, the tale offers a vision of salvation that complements its warnings about innocence and temptation, affirming that courage and justice can triumph over chaos. Ultimately, the huntsman in Little Red Riding Hood is a timeless symbol of salvation and justice, drawing on a 2,000-year-old tradition of heroes who restore order in the face of danger. His role as a protector connects to ancient myths, religious narratives, and philosophical teachings, from Hercules' labors to David's courage. By rescuing Little Red and her grandmother, the huntsman reaffirms the hope that good can prevail, offering a powerful counterpoint to the tale's darker themes. As we navigate modern challenges, the huntsman's legacy endures, urging us to seek justice and protect the vulnerable in a world where wolves still lurk. The tale of Little Red Riding Hood is deeply imbued with gender dynamics and societal messages, particularly in its portrayal of a young girl navigating a world of danger. Whether in Charles Perrault's grim 1697 version, where Little Red meets a tragic end, or the Brothers Grimm's redemptive 1812 retelling, where she is saved by the huntsman, the story reflects historical anxieties about female vulnerability and societal expectations. Little Red, with her bright hood and trusting nature, embodies innocence, while the wolf represents a predatory masculine threat. Over 2,000 years, from ancient myths to modern folklore, narratives have used gendered archetypes to explore themes of safety, autonomy, and moral responsibility, often reinforcing societal norms while occasionally challenging them. In Little Red Riding Hood, These gender and societal messages serve as a timeless cautionary tale, urging vigilance while raising questions about the relevance of such lessons in contemporary contexts. In its historical context, Little Red Riding Hood reflects the patriarchal structures of early modern Europe, where Perrault and the Grimms crafted their versions. Young women were expected to embody virtue, obedience, and caution to protect their reputation and safety in a society that often viewed them as inherently vulnerable. Little Red's journey leaving the safety of home, straying from the path, and trusting the wolf can be read as a warning against defying these norms. Her red hood, often interpreted as a symbol of puberty or sexual awakening, marks her as both desirable and at risk, amplifying societal fears about female visibility. In Perrault's version, her demise underscores the dire consequences of failing to adhere to prescribed roles, a message tailored to a 17th century French audience wary of courtly seducers. The Grimm's edition of The Huntsman softens this lesson, suggesting that salvation is possible but still reliant on male intervention, reinforcing traditional gender roles. This gendered narrative finds echoes in ancient storytelling traditions. Over 2,000 years, myths like that of Persephone in Greek mythology portray young women whose innocence leads to their capture by masculine forces, such as Hades, reflecting anxieties about female autonomy in patriarchal societies. Similarly, in ancient Rome, tales of virtuous women like Lucretia, whose violations sparked societal upheaval, emphasized the need to protect female chastity. These stories, like Little Red Riding Hood, use gender dynamics to warn against straying from societal expectations, framing women as both victims and moral exemplars. The wolf's role as a masculine predator aligns with these archetypes, embodying threats that range from physical danger to social ruin, a motif that persists across cultures and eras. Psychologically, the tale's gender dynamics can be interpreted through the lens of gendered archetypes. In Jungian terms, Little Red represents the animanescence and emotional openness, while the wolf embodies the shadow, often coded as masculine aggression or cunning. Her encounter with the wolf reflects an internal struggle to navigate emerging identity within a world that imposes strict gender norms. This psychological reading connects to ancient philosophical traditions, such as Plato's discussions of the soul's balance between desire and reason, where unchecked impulses lead to peril. The Stoics, too, emphasized self-control as a defense against external threats, a principle that resonates with Little Red's need to temper her trust with discernment. Over 2,000 years, these ideas have shaped narratives that urge women to guard their innocence, often at the cost of autonomy, highlighting the tension between individual freedom and societal expectations. Culturally, Little Red Riding Hood reflects the societal pressures placed on women to navigate danger while upholding virtue. In medieval and early modern Europe, women were taught to avoid wolves in the form of predatory men, a lesson reinforced by the tale's warning to stay on the path. This message aligns with ancient texts like the biblical Book of Proverbs, which advises young people, often implicitly women, to avoid temptation to preserve moral integrity. Medieval morality plays too frequently depicted women as vulnerable to sin, urging adherence to societal norms. The tale's gendered subtext thus serves as a cautionary lesson, warning women of the dangers of stepping outside prescribed roles, while implicitly critiquing the societal structures that place them at risk. The tale's gender dynamics also raise questions about agency and empowerment. In Perrault's version, Little Red's lack of agency leads to her downfall, reflecting a patriarchal view of women as passive victims. The Grimms' huntsman, while offering salvation, reinforces this passivity by positioning a male figure as the solution to female vulnerability, However, in some oral traditions, Little Red outwits the wolf herself, suggesting a proto-feminist reading where women reclaim agency. Modern retellings often amplify this, portraying Little Red as a self-reliant figure who navigates danger with cunning or strength. These variations connect to ancient narratives like the Epic of Inanna, where the Sumerian goddess asserts her power despite societal constraints, highlighting a 2,000-year-old tension between subjugation and empowerment in gendered storytelling. The societal messages embedded in the tale extend beyond gender to broader themes of conformity and safety. By urging Little Red to stay on the path, the story reflects historical anxieties about deviating from societal norms, a concern echoed in ancient cautionary tales like Icarus, who flies too high and falls. Over millennia, from Confucian teachings on social harmony to Christian parables on righteousness, narratives have emphasized adherence to established paths to avoid chaos. In Little Red Riding Hood, this message is gendered, framing women as particularly vulnerable to the consequences of disobedience, yet it also speaks to universal fears about the risks of straying into the unknown. In today's world, the tale's gender and societal messages invite critical reflection. While the warning to remain vigilant resonates in contexts like online safety or personal boundaries, the emphasis on female passivity feels outdated in light of modern feminist values. The wolf, as a symbol of predatory behavior, remains relevant, reflecting ongoing concerns about gender-based violence or manipulation. Yet, contemporary interpretations often reframe Little Red as an empowered figure, challenging the patriarchal undertones of earlier versions. This evolution mirrors shifts in societal attitudes, from ancient myths that confined women to virtuous roles, to modern narratives that celebrate agency and resilience. The tale's adaptability ensures its continued relevance, prompting us to question how gendered expectations shape our understanding of safety and responsibility. Ultimately, Little Red Riding Hood uses its gendered narrative to convey timeless societal messages about vulnerability, conformity, and accountability. Its portrayal of Little Red as a naive girl facing a masculine threat draws on 2,000 years of storytelling, from Persephone's abduction to Lucretia's sacrifice, reflecting enduring anxieties about female safety in patriarchal systems. By warning against straying from the path, the tale reinforces societal norms while subtly critiquing the constraints they impose. As we navigate modern challenges, from gender equality to personal empowerment, the story's lessons urge us to balance vigilance with agency, ensuring that innocence is not a liability, but a strength tempered by wisdom. The tale of Little Red Riding Hood has undergone significant transformations since its origins in European oral folklore, adapting to reflect the values, fears, and aspirations of each era. From its grim iteration in Charles Perrault's 1,697 Histoires ou Contes du Temps Passé to the redemptive version in the Brothers Grimm's 1,812 Kinder und Hausmärchen, and through countless oral and modern retellings, the story has proven remarkably malleable. Its core elements, the Red Hood, the wolf, the forest, and the journey remain constant, yet their interpretations shift to address changing societal contexts. Over 2,000 years, storytelling traditions have evolved to mirror cultural shifts, from ancient myths to contemporary narratives, using tales like Little Red Riding Hood to impart moral lessons, reinforce social norms, or challenge established conventions. This section explores the tale's evolution, highlighting its adaptability and enduring relevance as a vessel for timeless human concerns. In its earliest forms, Little Red Riding Hood likely emerged from oral traditions in medieval Europe, where rural communities shared cautionary tales to navigate the dangers of their world. These pre-literary versions, often told around hearths, varied by region, with the wolf embodying local fears bandits, wild animals, or supernatural entities. Some oral tellings ended with Little Red outwitting the wolf, emphasizing cunning over victimhood, while others mirrored Perrault's later tragic conclusion. Perrault's 1697 version, written for a French courtly audience, formalized the tale as a stark warning about female vulnerability. His Little Red, devoured by the wolf, serves as a moral exemplar, cautioning young women against naivety and disobedience in a patriarchal society. The absence of a savior figure underscores the harsh consequences of straying from societal norms, aligning with 17th century French anxieties about virtue and seduction. The Brothers Grimm's 1812 retelling marked a significant shift, introducing the huntsman who rescues Little Red and her grandmother, reflecting the Romantic era's emphasis on redemption and moral growth. This change softened the tale's tone, aligning with 19th century ideals of family values and hope, particularly in a Germany navigating industrialization and social change. The Grimm's edition of a second encounter, where Little Red and her grandmother outwit another wolf, further emphasizes learned responsibility, transforming the tale into a narrative of empowerment through experience. This evolution mirrors broader shifts in storytelling, where narratives began to balance caution with optimism, a trend seen in other fairy tales of the period, such as Cinderella or Hansel and Gretel. The tale's adaptability connects it to a 2,000-year-old tradition of storytelling that evolves to reflect cultural values. In ancient Greece, myths like Pandora's box were retold across generations, shifting from cautionary tales of divine punishment to explorations of human curiosity. Similarly, in ancient Rome, fables like those of Phaedrus adapted Aesop's morals to address Roman social issues. Little Red Riding Hood follows this pattern, its narrative reshaped to suit the moral and social priorities of each era. For example, medieval oral versions might have emphasized community vigilance, while Perrault's version targeted courtly audiences with warnings about predatory men. The Grimm's retelling, by contrast, catered to a burgeoning middle class, promoting ideals of family unity and moral resilience. Psychologically, the tale's evolution reflects changing perceptions of human agency and growth. In Perrault's version, Little Red's lack of agency underscores her role as a passive victim, aligning with a deterministic view of fate common in 17th century thought. The Grimm's introduction of the huntsman and Little Red's later cunning suggest a more dynamic understanding of the psyche, where mistakes lead to learning. This shift resonates with ancient philosophical traditions, such as Plato's concept of the soul's journey from ignorance to wisdom, or Stoic teachings on learning through adversity. Over 2,000 years, from Aristotelian ethics to Enlightenment ideas of self-improvement, narratives have increasingly emphasized personal growth, a theme Little Red Riding Hood adopts in its later iterations, transforming Little Red from a doomed innocent to a figure capable of resilience. Culturally, the tale's evolution reflects shifting societal norms, particularly around gender and autonomy. Perrault's version reinforces patriarchal expectations, warning women to remain obedient, to avoid ruin. The Grimm's retelling, while still gendered, introduces agency through Little Red's eventual outwitting of the wolf, hinting at emerging 19th century ideas of female capability. Modern retellings take this further, often portraying Little Red as a proactive heroine who confronts the wolf directly, reflecting feminist movements that challenge traditional victim narratives. This evolution parallels ancient stories like the Epic of Inanna, where the Sumerian goddess's journey from vulnerability to power was reinterpreted over centuries to emphasize agency. The tale's ability to adapt its gendered messages underscores its role as a mirror for societal change, addressing timeless concerns about safety and empowerment. The tale's moral framework also evolves to reflect changing ethical priorities. In oral traditions, the focus might have been survival through cunning, aligning with practical concerns of rural life. Perrault's version emphasizes moral absolutism, where disobedience leads to punishment. The Grimm's narrative introduces redemption, reflecting Christian ideals of forgiveness and growth prevalent in 19th century Europe. These shifts connect to a broader tradition of moral storytelling, from biblical parables like the prodigal son, which emphasize redemption, to Confucian tales that stress duty and harmony. Over 2,000 years, narratives have adapted to balance warnings with hope, a dynamic Little Red Riding Hood embodies as it transitions from a tale of doom to one of learning and triumph. In contemporary contexts, Little Red Riding Hood continues to evolve, reflecting modern anxieties and values. Retellings in literature, film, and theatre often reimagine Little Red as a symbol of empowerment, confronting the wolf with wit or strength, as seen in works like Angela Carter's The Company of Wolves. The forest may represent psychological or societal challenges, from mental health struggles to digital dangers, while the wolf embodies modern predators like online scammers or systemic injustices. These adaptations highlight the tale's flexibility, allowing it to address 21st century concerns while retaining its core warning about naivety and responsibility. This mirrors ancient storytelling traditions, such as the Odyssey, where Odysseus's trials were reinterpreted to reflect the values of each retelling culture. Ultimately, the evolution of Little Red Riding Hood underscores its place within a 2,000-year-old tradition of adaptable storytelling. From oral folklore to Perrault's moral warning, the Grimm's redemptive arc, and modern empowered retellings, the tale reflects humanity's shifting values while preserving its cautionary essence. Its ability to adapt whether to patriarchal norms, romantic ideals, or feminist principles demonstrates its role as a cultural mirror, addressing timeless themes of innocence, danger, and growth. As we navigate modern forests of uncertainty, Little Red Riding Hood remains a vital narrative, urging vigilance and resilience while evolving to meet the needs of each new generation. The tale of Little Red Riding Hood, with its vivid imagery and moral undertones, transcends its fairy tale origins to resonate with ancient philosophical lessons that have shaped human thought for over 2,000 years. Whether in Charles Perrault's cautionary 1697 version or the Brothers Grimm's redemptive 1812 retelling, the story of Little Red's journey through the forest, her encounter with the wolf, and her eventual salvation or demise, encapsulates timeless teachings about wisdom, self-awareness, and moral responsibility. From the Socratic emphasis on self-knowledge to Stoic principles of self-control, and from Confucian ethics to Christian moral frameworks, Little Red Riding Hood reflects philosophical ideas that urge individuals to navigate life's dangers with discernment and resilience. This section explores how the tale connects to these ancient lessons, affirming its role as a narrative vessel for enduring human wisdom. At its core, Little Red Riding Hood embodies the Socratic principle of know thyself, a cornerstone of ancient Greek philosophy articulated by Socrates and recorded by Plato. Little Red's failure to question the wolf's intentions reflects a lack of self-awareness, leading to her perilous encounter. Socrates taught that true wisdom begins with recognizing one's own ignorance, a lesson Little Red learns through her mistake of straying from the path. In Plato's Apology, Socrates argues that an unexamined life invites folly, much like Little Red's unexamined trust in the wolf invites danger. The tale's warning to remain vigilant aligns with this 2,000-year-old call to self-knowledge, urging individuals to question appearances and cultivate discernment in a world filled with deceptive wolves. The Stoic philosophy of ancient Rome, articulated by thinkers like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, further illuminates the tale's lessons. Stoicism emphasizes self-control and rational judgment as defenses against external chaos. Little Red's decision to linger in the forest, swayed by the wolf's charm, represents a failure to govern her impulses, a lapse that Stoics would argue leads to harm. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius advises focusing on what is within one's control reason and virtue rather than succumbing to external temptations. The Grimm's version, where Little Red learns to outwit a second wolf, reflects this Stoic ideal of learning through adversity, transforming naivety into wisdom. Over 2,000 years, this principle has persisted, from Stoic teachings to modern mindfulness practices, resonating with the tale's call to temper innocence with responsibility. Confucian philosophy, originating in ancient China around 500 BCE, offers another lens for understanding Little Red Riding Hood. Confucius emphasized duty, propriety, and adherence to social roles to maintain harmony. Little Red's disobedience in ignoring her mother's instruction to stay on the path disrupts this harmony, inviting the wolf's deception. In Confucian terms, her journey reflects a failure to uphold ilai, proper conduct, leading to chaos. The tale's moral, particularly in the Grimm's redemptive arc, aligns with Confucian teachings on learning from mistakes to restore balance, as seen in texts like the Analects, where personal growth is tied to correcting errors. This connection underscores the tale's universal appeal, bridging Western folklore with Eastern wisdom to emphasize responsibility as a path to moral maturity. Christian philosophical traditions, rooted in biblical teachings, also resonate with the tale's lessons. The wolf's deception parallels the serpent in the Garden of Eden, tempting Eve with false promises and leading to humanity's fall. Both stories warn against succumbing to alluring but dangerous influences, emphasizing the need for moral vigilance. In Perrault's version, Little Red's demise serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of sin, aligning with Christian admonitions to resist temptation, as seen in the Book of Proverbs. The Grimm's introduction of the huntsman reflects Christian ideals of redemption, akin to Christ's role as a savior in theological narratives. Over 2,000 years, from early Christian parables to medieval morality plays, this emphasis on moral accountability has shaped stories like Little Red Riding Hood, urging individuals to navigate temptation with faith and wisdom. Psychologically, the tale's philosophical lessons align with the journey from innocence to experience. In Jungian terms, Little Red's encounter with the wolf represents a confrontation with the shadow, the darker aspects of the psyche, while her survival, in the Grimm's version, signifies integration and growth. This mirrors ancient philosophical quests for self-understanding, such as Aristotle's concept of eudaimonia, or flourishing, achieved through virtuous action. Little Red's mistakes highlight the Aristotelian idea that virtue is learned through practice, not innate perfection. Her journey through the forest, a metaphor for the psyche's uncharted terrain, reflects a 2,000-year-old tradition of exploring human development, from Plato's allegory of the cave to modern existentialist thought, which emphasizes finding meaning through life's trials. Culturally, Little Red Riding Hood reflects philosophical concerns about societal order and individual responsibility. In medieval Europe, Where oral versions of the tales circulated, community survival depended on adherence to shared norms. Little Red's deviation from her mother's path threatens this order, inviting chaos in the form of the wolf. This aligns with ancient philosophical frameworks such as Hobbes' later concept of the social contract, which posits that individual restraint ensures collective safety. The tale's evolution, from Perrault's punitive ending to the Grimm's redemptive one, reflects shifting philosophical perspectives, from rigid moralism to enlightenment, ideals of personal growth. These shifts connect to a broader tradition of storytelling, from Aesop's fables to Buddhist parables, which use narrative to teach ethical responsibility. In modern contexts, the tale's philosophical lessons remain strikingly relevant. The call to self-awareness and discernment resonates in a world of misinformation, digital temptations, and complex social dynamics. Little Red's journey mirrors the modern individual's struggle to navigate a forest of choices, where wolves may appear as manipulative media or societal pressures. The Socratic emphasis on questioning, Stoic focus on self-control, and Confucian call to duty offer timeless tools for addressing these challenges. Modern retellings of Little Red Riding Hood, which often portray her as empowered and self-reliant, reflect existentialist ideas of creating meaning through action, echoing thinkers like Sartre, who championed personal responsibility in an uncertain world. Ultimately, Little Red Riding Hood serves as a narrative bridge to ancient philosophical lessons, distilling complex ideas into a simple yet profound story. Its warnings about naivety, temptation, and the need for self-awareness draw on 2,000 years of wisdom, from Socrates' call to know oneself to Christian teachings on redemption. By portraying Little Red's journey as a path to wisdom through trial, the tale underscores the universal human quest for moral and intellectual growth. As we face modern uncertainties, its philosophical connections remind us to cultivate discernment, balance innocence with responsibility, and navigate life's forests with the clarity of ancient wisdom. Little Red Riding Hood is far more than a children's fairy tale. It is a profound narrative that distills 2,000 years of human wisdom into a simple yet enduring cautionary lesson. From its origins in European oral folklore to Charles Perrault's Grimm 1697 version and the Brothers Grimm's redemptive 1812 retelling, the story of a girl, her red hood, a cunning wolf, and a perilous forest encapsulates universal truths about innocence, temptation, responsibility, and resilience. Over 2 millennia, from ancient myths to modern interpretations, storytelling has served as a vehicle for imparting moral and philosophical lessons, warning against the dangers of naivety while celebrating the potential for growth through adversity. This section synthesizes the tale's timeless lessons, exploring how its warnings remain strikingly relevant in today's world, urging us to navigate modern forests with vigilance and wisdom. At its heart, Little Red Riding Hood warns of the perils of unchecked innocence. Little Red's trust in the wolf and her deviation from her mother's path reflect a universal human vulnerability, the tendency to be swayed by appearances or temptation. This lesson echoes ancient narratives, such as the Greek myth of Persephone, whose naivety leads to her abduction by Hades, or the biblical story of Eve, whose trust in the serpent precipitates humanity's fall. Across 2,000 years, from Mesopotamian epics to Christian parables, stories have cautioned that innocence, while precious, must be tempered with discernment to survive a world filled with wolves. In Perrault's version, Little Red's demise underscores this starkly, while the Grimm's inclusion of the huntsman offers hope that mistakes can lead to redemption, a duality that resonates with timeless human experiences of failure and growth. The tale's emphasis on responsibility as a counterbalance to innocence aligns with ancient philosophical traditions. Socrates' maxim to know thyself, articulated over 2,000 years ago, urges self-awareness to avoid folly, a principle Little Red violates by trusting the wolf's charming facade. Similarly, Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius advocated self-control to navigate life's uncertainties, a lesson reflected in the Grimm's portrayal of Little Red learning to outwit a second wolf. Confucian teachings on duty and propriety, dating back to 500 BCE, emphasize adherence to social roles to maintain harmony, a value mirrored in Little Red's need to follow her mother's path. These philosophies, spanning diverse cultures, underscore the tale's universal call to pair innocence with accountability, a message that remains vital in a modern world of complex choices and hidden dangers. Psychologically, Little Red Riding Hood maps the journey from innocence to maturity, a process central to human development. In Jungian terms, the forest represents the unconscious, the wolf, the shadow, and the huntsman, the ego's capacity to restore order. Little Red's encounter with danger reflects the psychological trials of confronting one's vulnerabilities, a theme explored in ancient texts like Plato's allegory of the cave, where the journey from ignorance to enlightenment is fraught with peril. Over 2,000 years, from Aristotelian ethics to modern existentialism, thinkers have emphasized growth through adversity, a concept the tale embodies as Little Red learns from her mistakes. This psychological resonance ensures the story's relevance, as individuals today navigate personal forests of identity, ambition, and uncertainty. Culturally, the tale's lessons reflect societal anxieties about safety and order. In medieval Europe, where oral versions thrived, communities relied on shared norms to protect against external threats, from bandits to wild beasts. Little Red's deviation from the path threatens this order, inviting chaos in the form of the wolf. This mirrors ancient narratives like the Epic of Gilgamesh, where straying into the cedar forest brings confrontation with monstrous forces. The Grimm's redemptive ending, with the huntsman's intervention, reflects Christian ideals of salvation, akin to parables of divine rescue, while Perrault's tragic conclusion aligns with stricter moral codes of 17th century France. These cultural variations highlight the tale's adaptability, allowing it to address evolving societal concerns while preserving its core warning about vigilance. In the modern world, Little Red Riding Hood remains profoundly relevant, as its lessons apply to new forms of temptation and danger. The forest of the 21st century, encompassing digital platforms, social media, and globalized societies, presents novel wolves in the form of misinformation, online predators, or societal pressures. Little Red's naivety parallels the risks of trusting unverified information or engaging with deceptive influences, from phishing scams to manipulative advertising. The tale's call for discernment echoes modern imperatives to navigate technology with critical thinking, a skill as essential now as it was in ancient philosophical teachings. The huntsman's role, symbolizing justice and intervention, finds parallels in modern advocates for safety, from cybersecurity experts to social justice activists, offering hope that order can be restored amidst chaos. The tale's gendered dimensions, explored in Section 7, further enhance its modern relevance. While earlier versions reinforced patriarchal norms, urging women to remain obedient to avoid danger, contemporary retellings often portray Little Red as empowered, confronting the wolf with agency and resilience. This evolution reflects feminist principles, challenging traditional victim narratives and aligning with ancient stories like the Epic of Inanna, where female figures assert power despite societal constraints. The tale's ability to adapt to modern values while retaining its cautionary essence underscores its place in a 2,000-year-old storytelling tradition that evolves to address contemporary concerns, from gender equality to personal empowerment. The enduring power of Little Red Riding Hood lies in its ability to distill complex philosophical and moral lessons into a narrative accessible to all ages. Its warnings about innocence, temptation, and responsibility draw on ancient wisdom, from Socratic self-knowledge to Christian redemption, while its adaptability ensures its relevance across cultures and eras. As we face modern challenges, whether digital deception, societal polarization, or personal growth, the tale urges us to tread carefully, question appearances, and cultivate wisdom. The forest may change, and the wolves may take new forms, but the need for vigilance and resilience remains constant, echoing 0 years of human striving to navigate life's uncertainties with courage and clarity. Ultimately, Little Red Riding Hood stands as a timeless testament to the human condition, weaving together lessons from ancient myths, philosophies, and cultural traditions. Its simple narrative belies a profound message. Innocence must be tempered with responsibility to survive a world of hidden dangers. By reflecting universal truths about growth, discernment, and redemption, the tale continues to guide us, offering wisdom as vital today as it was in the forests of folklore or the forums of antiquity. As we confront our own wolves, Little Red Riding Hood remains a beacon, urging us to learn from its 2,000-year-old message and navigate life's paths with wisdom and hope.